Good evening. I call the meeting of the Columbus City Council for October the 5th, 2021 to order. Welcome, everyone. At this time, I'd like to ask Pastor Andy Setawan, Youth Outreach Pastor for the Assembly Church, to come and give our opening prayer, please.
Recording in progress.
Will you bow your head and pray? Dear Heavenly Father, thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here today. Thank you for your many and abundant blessings. Thank you for your life itself, for the measure of health. Thank you for the ability to be involved in useful work and for the honor of bearing appropriate responsibilities. Thank you as well for the freedom to embrace you tonight, Father, and to come before you this evening. And thank you for loving us even so. We pray for our mayor, for the various levels of city officials, and in particular for this assembled council here tonight. We are asking that you would graciously grant them wisdom to lead amid the conflicting interests and issues of our times, a sense of the welfare and true needs of our people, a keen thirst for justice and rightness, confidence in what is good and fitting, the ability to work together in harmony even when there is honest disagreement, personal peace in their life, and joy in their task. We pray for the agenda set before them today. Please give them an assurance of what would please you and what would benefit those who live and work in and around our beloved city of Columbus. It is in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Setawan. At this time, I would also ask the council and the citizens to keep Ward 2, Joe Mickens, in your thoughts and prayers. He recently lost his brother and will be attending services for him Monday. Council members, do you have any changes or additions to the agenda?
Yes, sir, Mayor. I would like to discuss the policy on the use of city facilities
Okay. Where would you like to add that?
on the policy agenda.
Okay, we'll make that letter G at the end of the policy agenda. Okay. Thank you, Councilman Beard.
Also, Mr. Mayor, I just want to add on the citizen input to discuss Mrs. Harrison setting up a vending machine citizen input. Actually, open it up. I don't know if she's here or not.
Ms. Hairston, are you here? Well, we'll give her time to get here. We'll add that to citizen input. Thank you, Councilman Mickens. Anything else? If not, is there a motion to adopt the agenda of this meeting? Have a motion by Councilman Green. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Stewart. Any more discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. Council, before you are the minutes of the previous meeting of September the 21st, 2021. Are there any corrections to the minutes? If not, do I have a motion to approve?
So move.
I have a motion by Councilwoman DeChico. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Stewart. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes. On the claims docket, the total to be paid on the docket of claims for October the 5th, 2021 is $369,697.53. Does anybody have any questions for Mark?
Are there better financial reports relative to the docket of claims that could show how approval of the docket will affect the budget violations or being in compliance?
Probably. No, I've said, I'm not an accountant, I'm an economist, but my understanding in talking with both our past chief financial officer and our past auditor is that, what they advise is that we should approve the highest level of budget item as we can. So that, for us, that would be at a departmental level. Essentially, then that's where our, I would say, ability and responsibility for being over budget would lie, at the departmental level, not the line item level. Now, that's not an excuse or rationale to then go over budget in those line items. But yes, there would be some better reporting that could be done. But again, remember, if it's on the docket, it's incurred expenditures. Does that make sense? Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion to approve?
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Green and a second by Councilman Mickens. Any other discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes 5-1.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, just to get this on the minutes, the last meeting, the number that you read for the docket was incorrect. The amount that was included in everyone's, excuse me, in everyone's packet was correct. The backup documentation was correct. So for the minutes, I would just want to have that the council approved a payment of $1,327,729.68. However, that number should be $1,182,010.25. The reason for that is that an invoice was included in the docket that is paid by ACH, which was later removed. Thank you.
Does everybody understand that?
Yes.
So I guess then the question is, do we want to correct that statement in the minutes? Are you saying that the amount reported in the September 21 minutes is correct as it's written, 1 million?
It's not correct as it's written, but it was what was approved. So as talking with Ms. Mitchell, what we would do is have that spread across these minutes that
Yeah.
we.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
Next, we have the consent agenda, items A through E. Do I have a motion to approve?
So move.
I have a motion by Councilman Mickens. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Stewart. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Before I ask for the forensic auditors presenters, are there any city council members who have general comments or announcements?
Yes,
Councilman Jones?
yeah. I just want to remind everyone that it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And I am supporting Real Men Wear Pink. That's why I have on all this pink and the tie and all that stuff. But if you would like to donate, go to my Facebook page or go to Real Men Wear Pink and make a donation. I'm pretty sure everyone knows somebody that's been affected by breast cancer. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Jones. That's, and again, he said
Real
go to his
man.
Facebook page to make a donation for a very important. Councilman Beard is supporting his pick tonight.
I just want me my socks.
We have our forensic audit presenters on the agenda, and we appreciate the representatives from both firms being here. But before they present, I'd like to ask Chief Shelton to come forward for the swearing-in of 3 officers, followed by his presentation of commendation for 6 officers. We're going to do the oath of office. If you'll raise your right hand. I do solemnly swear that I will support, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States of America and the state of Mississippi. I will perform the duties of this office to which I have been appointed and which I am about to assume, that I will not be influenced in any matter on account of personal bias or prejudice, that I will in all respects observe the policies and directives of the Columbus Police Department. I will execute the duties of my office as peace officer with integrity, police ethics, and protect the property of said Columbus, Mississippi. So help me God. Congratulations.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I bring before you these officers and want to recognize their dedication to duty and service and honor them by giving them a police commendation. The officers are, it's all going to be the same, so I'm just going to call their names, but I'll read out the citation. It said, this citation is presented to Sherman Mosley, City of Columbus Police Department Patrol Division, who distinguished himself on July the 31st, 2021. Within the scope of his duties, he assisted the Amory Police Department in the capture of a murder suspect who had fled to Columbus. He was a vital member of his shift team's effort to search and capture procedures. Officer Mosley's dedication to duty, selfless service, training, and outstanding professional ability contributed to the successful apprehension of the murder suspect. This outstanding performance is in the keeping with the finest police tradition of protect and serve, and reflect greatly upon himself,
the Columbus Police Department in the city of Columbus. Also, this is award to Officer Joshua Birchfield, Officer Joy Winford, Officer Rodriguez Porter, and Officer Alexis Sanders.
Oh, he didn't call Amanda Burrell's name.
Is he nervous?
Thank you, Chief, and again, congratulations to each of you. You're welcome. The well-being of the city's finances is and always will remain a top priority for me. It is very important for us to know exactly where we stand, and as promised, we have been aggressively looking at and speaking with firms who feel will help us with this audit. We have two firms here to present today, and I would now like to ask John Collier, who is with Legier Forensics CPA and Business Consultants, to come forward. And I believe you have bills on,
Mr. Legier fell off the Zoom call. If he comes back, maybe we'll add him.
oh, okay.
He lost his connection.
Would you like to go forward with it now, or do you want to wait and try to reconnect?
We can move forward now, Mayor. I know y'all's time's important, so.
I think he's coming right now. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
I got a new number that I don't recognize. Is that him?
Yes.
It looks an awful lot like him.
Give 1 second. Mr.
He changed. Did he have that on already?
You can tell him to unmute, Mayor.
Bill, can you unmute?
I am unmuted.
Okay, great. We can hear you. Thank you.
There we go. Well, Mayor, City Council, the first thing we'd like to do is express our gratitude for allowing us the privilege and come to speak to you all today. We've spoken to the mayor and other city officials and understand the need and desire of this administration to instill.
Bill, can I stop you for 1 second?
Sure.
People in the audience are pointing up to the does it not work where they can see it, the audience can see the TVs on the other side?
I get it. My mistake. If it didn't turn it on, Mayor, I'm sorry. Well, important detail.
Sorry, Bill. I wouldn't have been able to concentrate with Bob Raymond doing this.
No worries.
My mistake.
It's not a meeting without technical difficulties.
That's exactly right.
You're on.
Excellent.
Sorry.
Thank you.
No worries. Thank you, Joe. So anyway, just would like to express our appreciation for allowing us the opportunity to come up and visit with you all today. The mayor and other city officials have expressed their desire to instill fiscal responsibility to the city of Columbus and the need to have someone in and desire to have someone come in and assist with that. And we are honored to be considered a potential for that role. My name's John Collier, and I am a certified fraud examiner, certified public accountant, and I'm a director at Leger & Company. I have been a certified fraud examiner and CPA for about 25 years and have worked on countless forensic accounting examinations in a number of different industries and for a number of different municipalities. And I'm going to present a little bit more later in the presentation about what our role is going to be, what we anticipate we will do in this investigation. But before I do that, I wanted to present the managing partner of the firm, Bill Leger, and let him speak a few words about our firm. So, Bill.
Sure, John. Thank you very much. On behalf of Leger and Company, I would like to thank you for allowing us to present our firm today. Mr. Mayor, Honorable Council, it's a privilege for us to be here with you. We understand your situation because we experience this quite often, unfortunately. I'll tell you a little bit about our firm, and then we'll turn it over to John for a more detailed view of what the services are going to look like and what we're proposing. The firm was founded in 1984, so we're not newcomers to the scene. We're engaged both locally and nationally on a regular basis by clients that range in size from small businesses and individuals to large publicly traded multinational companies, as well as states and local municipalities. One of the things that sets us apart is that we embrace a proactive approach to everything we do in servicing our clients. It's very important that we be of the highest technical and professional quality, up to date on and experience in all the areas of the services that we provide. And we also pride ourselves in delivering these services in a timely fashion. We don't just sit and wait for things to happen, we're very proactive. And we like to think of ourselves as fair value. We're not the cheapest in town, but you get a lot for your money, and you get fair value plus a highly skilled group of trained individuals who have got all the certifications, but also the experience and training that comes with it to ensure a quality engagement. Our firm members, first and foremost, are of the highest moral and ethical fiber. There is no degrees of that. We must be seen by our clients in that capacity. We strive for excellence. We have great firm member-client relationships at every level, very important, not just at the level that we're speaking and presenting ourselves here today, but with your staff and all of the various people within the city, because they are the components of your city that make it run. And it's very important that they feel comfortable with us and we feel comfortable with them as well as yourselves. Our directors and staff, most of which, if not all, began successful careers with either international accounting firms or equally impressive credentials. Thus, we have the technical expertise of these large international firms, but tempered with a more high-level personal involvement at the highest level while maintaining competitive fees. So you're going to see a lot of John and myself on the higher level if you were to engage us, then you will just have the experience of a lot of staff members. Not that they're not important, but you want to see people that have got I would like to think, the gray hairs and the experience to go with it. So that's a little bit about who we are. What we do, well, we are forensic CPAs. We investigate situations that where there's areas that need to be brought to the surface that are not necessarily in the best interest of the companies and institutions that we work with. We do economic damage calculations that result both from these forensic engagements as well as otherwise, and as a result of that, we're qualified to testify in courts throughout the country with great track records. All of our experience is something that we bring to the table should it ever come to the point that you're going to need to have testimony in trials. We're prepared to do that. We've got the credentials, we've got the experiences, and the courts and judges would like to think, understand and accept what we have to say. We also do business valuations and large class action multi-district litigation. Now, as far as more on point as to your type of business and your type of institution, we have state and local municipality engagements that we've encountered and experienced and been involved in from Texas to Florida. We've been engaged and are assisted state attorneys generals throughout those states, insurance commissioners, federal defender, public defenders, U.S. Justice Department, local governments, and states, including Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, Florida, Texas. The attorneys generals of all of these have either engaged us or worked closely with us in matters that resulted in substantial benefits to their states. One of the engagements that we were involved in was we were part of a team that brought about the largest environmental settlement in the history of our country. That was the BP settlement, which was some $20+ billion. We were the forensic firm working with the lawyers in calculating and putting that forward so that states like Mississippi enjoyed a tremendous benefit. We work hand in hand with experienced legal counsel because oftentimes the matters that we deal with require that. We believe that there's a lot of issues that need to be addressed on a proactive basis from a legal standpoint, and you just want to make sure that you're in good hands. And of course, the matters that we work on in fraud and forensic accounting and termination of lost profits span the majority of our firm's services. So with that said, if there's any questions from me, I'd be happy to answer them. But I think more importantly, John's got a more in-depth look that we're going to provide into the services that we'll propose for your consideration. And again, I'd like to thank you very, very much for the opportunity to present our firm to you. And by the way, half of my family are from Mississippi. I live in Mississippi. My mother was from Osaka, Mississippi, my grandfather from Osaka, and I relate to the Mississippi people. And so it's not a firm in New Orleans. We are truly engaged in that level of caring for the state of Mississippi and the city of Columbus. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill. Does anybody have any questions for Bill?
So, like Bill said, we have, a lot of experience in fraud examinations, forensic accounting work, economic damages, basically analyzing complex transactions. That's most of what we do. And from our communications with the mayor and other city officials, it's apparent that there's a lot of complex transactions and things at play historically that may give us some light how we can make some recommendations for the mayor and the council and the government to move forward in the future to instill this fiscal responsibility that the mayor is committed to. And so in discussions with him and others, we've come up with about 5 priorities to do what we call a fiscal checkup. And this is actually something that our firm has been doing for 30 years for businesses and government agencies, where we go in whether there's an issue or there's just a need to try to make things more efficient. And we go in and review financial transactions, financial statements, bank records to try to make recommendations. But in this instance, I think we've got some fairly specific things to address. One of the things that obviously is not, it's not hidden from anybody is that there was some misappropriation previously. And whenever that occurs, that means that some internal control procedures must not have been followed or must have allowed something to happen. And so that's an area that we need to address, is what happened previously. I think it's a matter of public record and in the newspaper that there was.
Thank you for the question, but we're not open for questions right now. Thank you. Go ahead.
But in addition to that, we've also got, we understand there's some prior budget deficits that need to be reviewed. We looked at 2018 is what I've heard needs to be looked at specifically. So that's something else that we want to take a look at, and we're going to drill down into each one of these things. But in addition to the prior misappropriations and budget deficits, we understand that the city has undertaken some construction projects due to tornadoes and just attempts to renovate and improve city buildings and areas. And some of those things have some cost overruns, and we want to try to help identify where those may have occurred to see how we may be able to make improvements moving forward so that the city can conduct these things and have a successful, efficient outcome with the best use of the taxpayers' money. We also want to take a look at departmental spending, and that is, I think more just to make sure that things are running efficiently and that the resources of the city are being used wisely in the best interest of the city. And so we're going to take a look at that as well. And once we finish all of that, I think probably the most important part of what we're going to do is our recommendations as to how to put things in place so that you can move forward in such a manner to minimize the opportunity that some of these unfortunate things that occur wouldn't happen in the future. And that's simply putting in good internal controls and good accounting policies and procedures. And those checks and balances are your number one thing to making sure that money doesn't slip through the cracks, things don't go over budget, things of that nature. So that's probably, in the end, the most important thing we'll ultimately do with this engagement. So, Joe, if you want to go on to the next slide. So, in terms of the prior misappropriations, and we're just going to dig down briefly into each of these, the main thing that we're going to do is identify, quantify, and report on. My IT people are sneaking around on me. Yes, if you can just, there we go. So the adequacy of the internal controls in place at the time, and you're going to see this is a consistent theme. We need to know what controls were in place at the times that things went wrong to understand how to improve those. So the first thing we're going to see is what were we doing to make sure that no misappropriation would occur. These include separation of duties. An example would be one person opening the bank statements, keeping that information separate from the person that pays the bills or writes the checks. That's an example of an internal control policy and procedure that we want to make sure either was in place, or if it was, what happened there. And if it wasn't, well, that's one thing we want to make sure and instill. So in addition to that, and probably something that will be very interesting to everybody, is to understand, was everything discovered? Our understanding is there was a discrete time period that was reviewed, I'm sure for very good reason, and a discrete area of misappropriation. But what we may do is we may look back further, make sure that the same things weren't occurring prior to the period that it was first discovered. We also may look and see if there are other areas of misappropriation, because oftentimes when an individual or a couple of individuals have control over a large portion of operations, they take multiple points to do things that are at the detriment to the city and to whoever they are taking money from. And so there may be more issues than just the one that you see now. You may not know about some of the other things, and we can discuss those later or now, what some potential things may have occurred that we want to just take a look at and say, is there a possibility that this could be another avenue where money may have left the city? So can we go one more? So then we've got the budget deficit, which we talked about previously, and we're just going to go in and we're going to try to understand what happened there. What was the reason that we overran the budget in terms of, what vendors were paid what and why, and were they paid at an inappropriate value, or was it just that there was more things that needed to be done that weren't covered in the initial budget? So that'll require us to look at the initial budget, compare it to the expenditures, and just evaluate the reasonableness of the payments versus the initial budget. And then last, and this is going to be our kind of our consistent theme here, is that once we've done this, the big goal is to recommend internal controls and accounting procedures moving forward that would safeguard the city's and the taxpayers' assets. And there's many that you can put in place that will minimize the opportunity for misappropriation or misuse and make things more efficient. So that's really where we are looking at with the prior misappropriations. Can we go to the next slide? So construction projects. So we have 4 or 5 projects that I understand that we just want to take a look at and understand again. All of these projects that may have gone over budget or maybe weren't completed, whatever may have happened that went wrong, the first thing we need to look at is what policies and procedures were in place at the time. And were those policies and procedures just not followed, or was there people in place that maybe should not have been the people that were performing the policies and procedures? So we'll take a look at that, and then go ahead. And then we'll take a look for each of the projects. We'll take a look at the initial budgets, and we will audit the actual costs so that we can understand this is what the budget was, this is what the costs were, and for each phase of the project, these are where the costs were incurred. So we can understand at what phase did this project go over, as well as to try to understand potentially, or is everything happening at arm's length? And that's something that's going to come up. But the most important thing you want to find out is, was someone paid for an appropriate good or service provided? Did you get fair value for that? That's a third-party arm's length transaction. Or if not, was somebody paid too much? That can happen accidentally. It can happen intentionally. But that's the goal of what we're trying to do here. And we will do that on, I'm sorry, the mask. I'm not used to wearing it the whole time. We'll do that on a project-by-project basis. So we'll take each one individually and say, okay, now we're going to look at these invoices, this budget, and these costs and try to rectify them. Change order submission and approval. Well, this is a natural order of this process. If a project went over budget, then there should have been change orders. So someone should have submitted a request for approval to increase the cost of a portion of the project. So did that happen? Who approved it? Why was it approved? And that process is enormous in terms of project budgeting. And so we'll want to take a look at that. And many of these things may be in your general ledger. So if you've got a chart of accounts where you have budgeted a project expense and you've posted those expenses as they come in, then we can go in and start there and say, okay, here's the list of all of the charges posted to this project. Someone go get all of the invoices for that list, and let's take a look at them and see which ones were paid and which ones were overpaid, underpaid, and which ones are appropriate. The related, unrelated party transaction. This is the general theme. Budgets can go over because of a number of things. What you really want to make sure is that it didn't go over because you didn't conduct business in an arm's length fashion, that you paid more than you should have paid, or paid more than you should have paid at all, much less paid more than the worth of the good or service provided. So we will take a look at that. And then, again, we'll make recommendations for internal controls and accounting procedures that will help try to minimize this from happening in the future. And they're consistent in terms of separation of duties and approvals and check signing and things like that. All of those things are things that can be implemented that can try to help minimize things like this from happening in the future. Departmental evaluations. Now this is more, I think, definitely more of the fiscal checkup type thing where we're really just looking to see where we can find efficiencies, make sure that the departments are being conducted in a manner that they're spending the city's and taxpayers' funds appropriately, and that it's for the best interest of the city. And we have many ways that we can do that in analyzing costs on an individual level and then just as far as categories are concerned. But that's the first order of business there. Next. Credit card expenditures. We see this a lot. Corporate credit cards and company credit cards go out to everybody all the time in all of the businesses that we work with in doing fiscal checkups. And sometimes there's a need to evaluate the reasonableness of the charges on those cards. And everything comes back to the same thing, which is what is the business nature and purpose of this expense? Whether it's a construction project expense for a construction project, or whether it's a credit card expense for a meeting that was conducted for the benefit of the city. Those are the important questions to ask. What is the business nature and purpose of this payment? Payroll, we'll probably take a brief look at payroll just to make sure. Payroll is an area that problems can occur, sometimes unintentional and sometimes intentional. And so we'll take a look to make sure that the payroll process is being managed correctly in terms of verifying the individuals being paid on a certain time frame to make sure that if people drop off the payroll, they're actually, because they're terminated or retired, that they're actually not being paid anymore, and that multiple paychecks not going to the same address. There's just a lot of things you can look at to evaluate whether or not there may be some misappropriation or problems going on with payroll. And then other areas to be addressed. And the reason that we have that, and we have it in this particular area, is departmental evaluations could lead to us seeing, okay, now that we're looking into payroll, we find something else that is another door that we may talk to the mayor, the city council, and say, this may be something that you may want to think about addressing as well. And so it's an area that we kind of left a little bit more open-ended than the other ones. I think the departmental evaluations have a tendency to there's more opportunity to say, okay, there's other things you could look at, and you need to decide what the scope of this engagement is. All right. Thank you, sir. The big drum roll, please. The estimated cost. So I tried to break this down by individual project so that you would see not a whole budget number, which is the approximate cost estimate below, which we've got right now at between $175,000 and $275,000. And that is broken down in its ranges by each area to address. And the low versus the high end of the range is based on a few things. One is the time period with which we need to look at things. So, for instance, for the prior embezzlement, that's a project where we may be going back as far as 2013. And we may be looking at multiple bank statements and multiple things like that. And so, for that reason, that range needs to be more, because we need to understand where we're going before we give you a better number. That's why that range is probably the most significant difference between the 50 and the 100. The others, literally, we just tried to break it down by the number of areas, number of construction projects, and the number of departments we were going to look at, and basically just give them each an amount that we thought would be the best estimate we could without looking at any documents or anything at this date. So, although I'm optimistic that we will be somewhere in this range, and potentially on the low side or even lower than the lowest portion, I certainly don't want to give anybody the impression that we're not going to do the best job we can. And wherever that takes us, that's where it takes us. But I would say this, is that to the extent that any of our work goes beyond the estimate that you see here today, we will not go beyond that estimate without first talking with the mayor and the people that are responsible for approving the scope and payment of this project. So you all will be involved in terms of deciding how far this goes and what areas to address. At this time, I'll open it up for questions.
John, can I mention one thing that might be of interest as well? This is Bill Leger here. One of the things that we do often where the data will allow us, if you've got the data sufficient for us to do this, we use sophisticated data mining software where we've written algorithms that allows us to go into all of your electronic data and identify what we call anomalies. It's amazing how we can slice and dice large quantities of data, financial data, and come up with anomalies that we find within that. I'm not saying that we will be able to do it in each and every case of yours, but to the extent that the data is electronic and it lends itself to this, I think that the benefit that you're going to get as a result of our firm that you will not probably see in many other areas of services offered by others. It's just something that we do. It's on a very advanced level, and we can take tens of millions of data points and shuffle them around, analyze them, and come up with anomalies within a very short period of time, which can be a big benefit. So anyway, John, great job, and we're here to answer questions. So go ahead, John.
John, I have a question.
Sure.
It's my understanding, you referred before about the previous year deficit that we had.
Yes, ma'am.
And we've undergone an audit with the CPA company. So if we paid them and just did an audit, now we have a new administration and there were corrections done with the previous audit, why would we need to come in and spend money that we don't have to do another audit in advance?
That's a good question, and I completely understand it. As far as you're seeing someone come in and performing an annual service to review your books and records and to attest that they are accurate. And auditors, attestation auditors, certainly perform a role that is different than forensic accountants. Auditors are, their role is to go in and test on a sample basis your books and records to a point that they can attain a level of assurance that they would say, based on our sampling, based on our review of all of this, looking at it all generally, looking at each area kind of the same, say, okay, based on this, we believe that the books and records are accurately reflected. And if you've ever seen, and I'm sure you have, one of the city audits, that language is probably pretty much in there, where how they talk about that it's a sample basis and they take a limited sample, and the financial statements are the responsibility of management. But based on our review, with caveats, the financial statements are correct. A forensic audit and forensic accounting is different, because what we do and what forensic accountants do in general is they look at a specific area. So their job is, and ours, is to, if there is a problem, they focus on that problem, and then they won't do things, we won't do things, on a sample basis. We will look at everything within that area. And so the auditors are, it would make sense for an auditor to look at a subset of data and say, this seems reasonable enough for us to move on to the next area. Whereas we would take an area where we believe there's an issue to be addressed, and we will look at all of the data. And we may uncover stuff that the audit did not uncover. Is that the auditor's fault? Not necessarily at all. But what it allows is to understand there's more things here than the audit would have uncovered under normal customary audit procedures. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Now,
John, I
is
might
there
add also
indication-
that,
Just a second,
John,
Bill.
I might,
I'm sorry, ma'am.
Is there indication now from the city that we need this forensic audit based on what's out there that would say, oh, we need to bring in a forensic auditor now?
Well, I think that, that
Because as a councilman,
may
we
be better
have
addressed
not
by the
been
mayor, I'm not
told.
sure. I'm
of
sorry,
it-
ma'am.
As a councilman group, we have not been told about any problems, with the audit and forensic. If I were a new administration, maybe I would want forensic to come in, but based on time that we just gone through an audit, based on the dollars that we have, it seems to me a little premature to bring in a forensic auditor.
Well, and I understand that, and I think what you're saying certainly makes some sense based on the perspective that you have, which is a very reasonable perspective. The one thing I might add is that when the auditors came in, they just completed this year's audit, correct? And that's what you're basing, saying that audit's done, they've signed off on things, everything looks good. Many of the things that we're going to look at and try to identify happen.
The current audit is not complete. Our current audit is not complete.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. The
It
last,
should be, but it's not.
well, the last one that you looked at, because obviously you've looked at an audit and you
Yes.
have comfort with it. Well, that audit would have covered maybe the fiscal year 2019. We may not be looking at anything from 2019. We may be everything we're looking at may be very historical, like talking about the prior misappropriation. If we identify misappropriation that occurred before the first period, that would not be something that the audit that you looked at would cover. But I understand completely your question, and you know, it makes sense from someone who would say, we're paying for an audit, this is what the auditors do, why do we need somebody else to come in and do the same thing or a similar thing? But they're pretty different in terms of a forensic accounting audit versus an attestation audit. I hope
John,
that
may
answers
I?
your question.
John, may I make a comment? It might be helpful to note, you can speak with your auditors. They're not looking for fraud, and if it comes to their attention, they'll let you know, but the objective behind an audit, it's oftentimes misunderstood because the term audit, you think, is designed to catch defalcation. It is not. And every auditor who you have will tell you the objective is not to detect fraud. If it comes to their attention, they'll call it to your attention, but that is not the objective. It's to simply say that your books and records are presented in accordance with GAS, generally accepted auditing standards, that relate to, and GAAP as well, that relate to the presentation and the material accuracy of those numbers, but they do not identify fraud unless it comes to their attention. They're two different things. And it reminds me of a situation where we had a client where we had defalcation, and we went back 2 years, and we found defalcation in 2 years, and they said very much the same thing that you're saying. Well, I guess that's it. We might as well finish up and button it up. And I said to them, I said, well, what makes you think that it stopped at the end of the second year? And they said, well, it probably did. We think we got it all. And then I said, well, did you notice that it started? It went back to January of that particular year. What makes you think that it didn't go back to December or November of the prior year? And sure enough, as we started peeling back the onion further, we found more and more and more. So I'm not suggesting that you want to go out and peel open wounds because it's very painful. But I think that there is a certain responsibility that will help you in clearing your own minds that you did the right thing and that you uncovered all the stones that you feel that could be uncovered to satisfy yourself that there was nothing going beyond the point that it was looked at. And if I were in your situation, I would probably welcome it, whether it's our firm or another firm. I would suggest that you probably will feel more comfortable knowing that you at least looked at it as opposed to just looking for the good in people, which oftentimes we do. I've been guilty of that myself. We look for the good in people and assuming that they're going to be doing the right thing when in fact you've got evidence of fraud. And why would it not have taken place years before that? No one knows unless you look at it, and we're here to help you if you'd like.
Yeah, and one other thing I'd add, though, because the word fraud has gotten bannered around a lot, and I think that in terms of the difference between a forensic accounting audit and an attestation audit, that's one important point. But probably more important for the purpose of this entire process, according to the mayor, is we want to put things in such a manner that things will move forward without the potential for waste and inefficiencies. And attestation auditors, they are not going to be looking at things and giving anybody recommendations to say, in this area, you could save $500,000 a year if you did X. And that's probably one of the more important aspects of what we're trying to do here. And I think, we're focusing on, we kind of stopped on the prior embezzlement issue, which there's definitely an issue there. But for the other ones, I think if we look at these construction projects, look at these departments and their spending habits, and we come back and we make recommendations that save the city several $100,000s a year in bleeding of funds or construction overruns and incomplete construction altogether, I think there's a tangible benefit there that attestation auditors, it's just not their responsibility or job. Generally, I'm not saying they're completely unresponsible for it, but that's more of what we'd be doing. I hope that answered your question.
You stated 4 or 5 projects in the construction area. Are you able to let us know out of those 4 or 5 which you feel like may have been mishandled, or are you able to give us the year of which those construction projects occurred?
Are you Pierre?
I am.
Okay, so as I didn't know what the, I'd just like to address you by name. That's a great question, and we've not looked at one document. Yeah, so we have not, in order to prioritize and understand the history and what the potential volume of inefficiencies are or overspending, I would really rather look at specific documents. But if we are engaged, what I would suggest or be willing to do certainly is to take a brief period of time to get ourselves immersed in it, even just a week or two, and then I would be very happy to specifically answer your question. I just don't, we just haven't gotten enough information yet. Because I've had one meeting so far.
I understand. I just noticed you said 4 or 5. I was wondering if you had, the information on those 4 or 5.
Only generally kind of the names of the projects, and, kind of what happened with them, as far as, like why they were undertaken, and, that some of them are not completed. Nothing in terms of this is how much was overspent, or this is how much was spent, or it's over budget by this much. I don't have those answers. I know that the Sims Scott Community Center was destroyed by a tornado, I believe, and they're kind of trying to rebuild that. That's really what I know about that project, and there's other projects kind of like that. I apologize for not being able to answer your question better, but if we do the work and y'all prioritize us doing a review of that first so we can come back in and meet with you all, I will answer that question specifically for you. Anyone else have any questions?
Anybody else have any questions? If not, we thank you both very much for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor,
Thank you.
Council. We appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you as well. Good night.
Oh, is it not? No, it doesn't. Now I'd like to bring forward Stephanie Smith of Grantham Pool for a brief introduction and presentation. Hi, Ms. Smith. How are you?
Hello, I'm fine, thank you. I brought copies of our proposal for the council members.
Okay.
Stacked, these people to my right and left.
Yes.
I want to thank you for letting me be here and make this presentation today. My name is Stephanie Smith, and I am the partner in charge of the fraud and forensic and litigation support areas of my firm. My firm is Grantham Pool, which is a large regional firm in Richland, Mississippi. We have also have an office in Oxford. We have 80 employees, 40 of whom are CPAs, another probably 15 are CPA candidates. And we're a very traditional accounting firm that does tax and audit work, but we also do a lot of management advisory work, and that spills into this fraud and forensic area. And fraud and forensics and litigation support have been an area that our firm has invested considerable resources in because there's obviously just a need for it, but we have 2 certified fraud examiners on our staff, and then we also have 2 people that are certified in financial forensics, and I'm one of those. And if our firm were to get this project, I would be the lead in the project. Back in August, I think, I came up here with another staff member and met with the mayor and Delia and Mark, and we discussed the reasons for wanting a financial audit and the problems that they'd observed in the past, and just really the idea that there's a new administration and that there was a desire to feel like there was a clean slate, maybe. I do think that when people's confidence gets shaken because something goes wrong, because there's an embezzlement, it's really hard for them to have confidence that the people and the processes are in place, that they can trust that the city's resources are being used to their best advantage. So with that, I think it's a very prudent move to want to do that, and I think that it's something that could be a very large and encompassing project like my colleague spoke about, or it could be pared down and still produce some really good benefits. Also, I'd like to say, kind of addressing a question we had a little bit earlier, that a financial audit, presents, attests to the presentation of financial statements. But a forensic investigation or forensic audit looks behind the numbers. It goes behind them to see, what the differences are, what the changes are, what the outliers are, and why did this happen? And so that's really a very rewarding process, and the end result should be that you know why, and you're able to tighten the controls and stop the processes that allowed something to happen, whether intentional or unintentional, that leaked away your resources. So as a result of our meeting that we had back in August, I came up with what I like to call the big rocks. These are the big things we would look at. We determine the extent of the prior embezzlement. Is that all there was? We would ascertain the regions for the budget deficit. We'd review the procedures and recommend some best practices for things like city purchases under $200, or construction contract management arrangements, court collection of fines and fees, the Convention and Visitors Bureau, the Light and Water Department, the Parks and Recreation Department. These are all things that were just mentioned that might need some looking into for their procedures for certain things. And then we'd also look at some recently completed construction projects, the Terry Brown Amphitheater, the fire station, and the Sim Scott Community Center. These were all areas of concern, and the period to be examined for some of these could be as many as 7 years, but it might not have to be. And some of those projects, of course, didn't span that period of time. But the end result of what we would do would be to come up with a set of recommendations, maybe quantify some losses, but come up with recommendations so that you don't have to worry about the city resources in the future. That you know that things are tightened up and they will not leak. And going forward, you can have confidence that the members of the council and the employees are being good stewards of the city's resources. As far as the timing of the work, we have a large staff. We are coming into the fall where I think we will have what I like to call considerable bench depth. We have people that can work here. Our fee structure is based on the hours required. We have people that work, for hourly rates of $140 up to $325, and we would definitely structure our work so that the best work is done at the lowest level. In determining a fee for our services, this is very hard because we've got this large amount of work, but we feel like we can touch every one of those areas that I spoke about for, a range of $23,000 to $28,000. Now, it doesn't mean we can do a deep dive into all of those. It means that we can get started. We can see, is this a problematic area? If not, we're going to move on. If it is a problematic area, we might have to come back and say, we're going to have to expand our budget a little bit. But we do feel confident that we can look at all those things and get a good feel for where we stand for that amount of money.
So what you're saying, the entire thing, $28,000?
I'm saying that we can look at these things that I listed in this list for that price.
So what would, since you're in this area, what would be the significant difference from you being 28,000 and this other firm saying 275,000?
You know, I listened to that, and here's what I think, but I can't speak for him. But I think that, when you think about looking at a project and you're going to, he seemed to be saying, we're going to look at every piece of paper that relates to everything that happened in this department for 7 years or further. I don't think that's necessary. I don't think there's a lot of good to be gleaned from digging that deeply into areas where you're not going to recover anything significant, or you're not going to, have a benefit of tightening up the controls. I think what is significant is to look at enough data that okay, there was a problem here. And you can do that without looking at every piece of paper. Now, you find the problem, and then you might have to go back and say, okay, we're going to have to look at everything that happened in this particular thing. And at that point, we might have to come back to the city council and say, we're going to need to expand our budget. It would be, but it would just be a matter of communication and a decision that you as a group would make about how we proceed. If we find something that we think requires more digging, then we should do that. To go and look at every expense related to a construction project that ran out of money before it got finished, I'm not sure. I think you could look at the categories of expenses and where you overran the budget and go, okay, here's the problem, let's look at this, rather than let's look at everything.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Smith. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Thank you
Have a
for
good evening.
letting us do this and propose. And we would love to work with you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Before we move past this, Mark, would you mind coming up for just 1 second? I do want to do some clarification here in the comments.
I have something to say behind the comment. To the mayor and my fellow colleagues on the council, I've prayed quite a bit about this, and I understand, Mr. Mayor, that you believe a forensic audit is useful at this time, but I also read in the paper you think that there's something the public won't. With due respect, in my ward, my constituents are not telling me this. My constituents are telling me that in Ward 2, the example would be that we need more paving on our street. We need to improve this drainage in these clummers, that when it rains, water is backing up in the commode in people's houses in these clummers. My people don't want water in their houses, but there are more needs. The people in Ward 2 are begging for more public safety, less crime. They want their kid to be safe in the street, and they want an end to the illegal drug using and the gang violence. Members of the council, I was leaning toward asking, will you table this proposal? So maybe it could be brought up another day. But as I thought about it, what we need for Columbus, and I prayed over this, And I came to this realization that a forensic audit at this time, we don't need right now. For I'm sure we don't need that as much as we need other things going on in the city of Columbus. If we are going to go out and try to raise money for something, I say we ask the taxpayer to give us donation for public radios. This is a serious safety issue. Or perhaps we could ask for donation for the police department, for our new police cars, for new cameras on the policemen when they're going out. Or maybe we should raise money through donation for the new boom truck that Public Works need. But the list can go on and on. I cannot vote to pay for searching our records going back for years and years that can cost us to finding something that might not even exist. I can't appreciate that a forensic audit might increase something. But if we do hire one of these firms, the whole process is going to distract us from the matter that should be our focus. And that focus is, rather than putting in place best practice and making sure those practices are followed, I think spending the energy of the key city resources, employees looking for records and responding for audited questions and requests, rather than focusing on the job. Members of the council, I agree with the mayor. Plan to establish a better practice for managing the personnel and our money of our property. But we on the council have been wanting improvement in those areas also. So let those things that need funding be funded. In Luke 9:62, he says, anybody that put his hand to the plow and look his back is not worthy of the kingdom of God. He also goes on to say, I don't quote these verses to preach to anybody here this evening, but in an agreement, working together, moving ahead and not backward. We need to quit looking behind us. We have opportunity here to move forward. At this time, I have no interest for forensic audit right now. Matter of fact, I make a motion that we do not accept the forensic audit, nor do we accept donation for it. That's my motion.
Second.
If I could say something, it was not on the agenda to vote on this tonight. It was on the agenda, if I could finish, to let people take this information and study it and read it. And then also take time to let the citizens look at this too. Now, I'm sorry that you were upset by my comments in the newspaper. What I'm trying to do is not look back, Councilman Mickens. We're trying to look forward. But to do that, you've got to gain trust and understanding in your community. Mark, if you could come up, please. What I want to do is try to explain.
It's a motion on the floor, and the council can put a motion on the floor at any time. Now, it's been motioned in second. Now, it's up to you to carry it out.
So could you explain in your motion why you want to do it right this minute and not wait until the 19th as we had planned on the vote?
Ain't nothing going to change in 2 weeks. Ain't nothing going to change.
What is your motion, Mr. Mickens?
My motion is that at this time, we're not going to do no forensic audit, nor are we going to accept any donation for it. That's my motion.
We have a motion on the floor and a second from Councilman Beard. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed? The motion passes 4-2. Thank you. At this time, I want to also mention for the ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act, that we need to form, we have those those have all been turned in. I want to let you know that the citizens and the councilmen know that I plan to have a committee to discuss the request for quotes for the ARPA, which would be the American Rescue Plan Act. I would like for 2 to 3 volunteers from the council to have time to commit to this. I think Mark sent an email out to y'all telling you what the time constraints would be on something like that. So we won't determine that tonight, but if y'all would like to consider that, that would be great, and we can talk about that later. Now, at this time, I need to call Mark forward again to talk about board vacancies.
Good evening again. We have one vacancy, which is a 5-year term on the Columbus Lowndes Library Board to replace Jennifer Box. I believe our first applicant is Miss Melissa Smith, and she is on the Zoom. Can you hear us, Miss Smith?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, you have the floor. Please proceed.
Okay, well, thanks for the opportunity to address the council. I'm a professor of communication at MUW, and I guess I'll start way back, but I'm going to make it kind of short. I grew up kind of poor in Northwest Alabama, and the library was really a place where I could go and I could find escape, and I could also check out precious books, which I didn't really have at home. And so I think that those Saturdays that I spent in the library were actually very influential in my life, because it kind of put me on a path of really being interested in learning for all my life. So I think the library still is a really important part of my family's life. We have a 14-year-old son who's pretty much grown up around libraries. I think that libraries have obviously changed a lot. It's not just books anymore. It is movies and streaming content and things that you wouldn't necessarily have seen many years ago. And I think the library is a really part of the community that should be very vibrant and should be really important for all groups of people. And that is not just for like grown-ups, because here in Columbus at the library, I'm sure you know, we have a really active program for young kids where Mother Goose goes in and reads to them. We have a lot of summer programs. It's also a really good resource for kids who are in schools that don't have good libraries, so they can go and do research and learn to use the library effectively. And it's also a really nice place for older citizens to do research and spend some time reading also and get some resources that they need. So I obviously really love libraries. I always have. I love reading. And when I saw a few weeks ago that no one had applied to be on the library board, it just really made me sad. And so I thought that I would step up and say, I'm willing to do this if you want to put me on it. I think I obviously bring a love of books to it, but I also have very extensive use of libraries over the course of my academic career. And so, I don't know, I would like to make sure that the library continues to change and that it responds to the needs of the community.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions for Ms. Smith? Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Thank you.
Our second applicant is Randy Robeson. On down.
Good evening, members of the City Council.
Good
and
evening.
Good evening.
Mayor Gaskin. I am so excited to speak to you all about my application to join the library board. Can you hear me? I'm kind of short, sorry. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to address you all directly. As I wrote in my application, I've spent a large portion of my life attending library programs, studying in libraries, and reading books that I have borrowed from libraries. In fact, I wrote a solid third of my master's thesis in the Columbus Lowndes Public Library, upstairs in the nonfiction section, in the corner, the desk that overlooks 7th Street, which is where I live. Libraries are one of the last places people can simply be without being expected to spend any money. That type of place is extremely precious. Actually, libraries even take it a step farther than that. They let you take the things in them home, which is incredible. Unless you're like me and you always have a late fee coming around. But we're not going to talk about that. Don't hold that against me. The Columbus Lowndes Public Library plays a vital role in our community by providing access to amazing resources that go far beyond books. And I know about them firsthand. In my previously held position as a park ranger for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, I personally visited all 4 branches of the Columbus Lowndes Public Library system to provide water safety and nature programs for the children of Crawford, Artesia, Caledonia, and Columbus. Since I'm no longer in that role, I'm not Ranger Randy anymore. I can't personally dress up like Buddy Beaver or bring my turtle, Myrtle, around to the kids. And so I'm looking for a new way to serve and support the library. I believe I would make a great addition to the library board. I already attend library programs and fundraisers, advocate through the library through my own personal social media, and share the library with others any chance that I get. And if chosen, I will bring my youthful enthusiasm, coordinating and communication skills, and my passion for the people in our community who benefit from the services our library provides. From job support to computer classes, the Walking Book Club, to Wee Baby, Lego Night, to my personal favorite, the Edible Book Contest. The library has something to offer for everyone, and I would like to offer my spare time and skills to help serve the library that serves so many in our community. I sincerely appreciate your consideration and hope to see you all at the Haunted Library on October 28th. I will be there in costume, probably. So, thank you so much. I hope you have a great night.
Thank you.
And our last applicant is Mr. Judah Bennett.
Hi, Mayor, City Council.
Good evening.
Good evening. Believe it or not, and this was actually in my speech, we have no relation to each other. But shortly before applying for this board, I also ran across that same quote, that libraries are one of the only public spaces in the world left that we are allowed to exist without actually having to spend money. So that was amazing that she actually said that already. That really resonated with me, and I was intrigued by the audacity of whoever wrote it to write such a commanding statement. We've all heard the saying that nothing is free in life, and to a certain extent that is true. But many people fail to realize that the money market is not the only form of exchange. Some things are invaluable and you simply cannot put a price on it. Authors spend their time, their tears, and their entire lives dedicated to one objective, and that's educating others. Libraries forward the mission of these authors, and the great part about it is that we get to choose from a wide array of subjects that are tailored to our interests. A personal favorite of mine is Greek mythology. Who knew that there could be so much truth in a myth? Through these stories, I learned to understand life, problems, and emotions, while also learning moral concepts that help me to conquer those problems and emotions. My early exposure to literature led me to study college hours in Greek mythology, and those principles helped to shape me into the person that I am today. Our state today is a lot better than it was a decade ago. I know because I grew up in a time when Mississippi had one of the highest illiteracy rates in the U.S. and subsequently one of the lowest graduation rates. My generation changed that statistic. Our age group saw nearly a 30% increase in graduation rates here in Mississippi. As for me personally, I have several people to thank. I was blessed to be born in a family of Mississippi readers that dated back 3 generations. My great-grandfather was a farmer in Knoxville County, but somehow he managed to accumulate a collection of books that lined nearly an entire wall in his study. And even back in the early 1900s, he taught every last one of his kids to read. And even one of them became the first African-American woman to serve on her school district's board. So forth, my grandmother taught all of her 10 kids to read, and needless to say, my mom was extremely adamant on making sure that I was a fluent reader. Since the early 2000s, when I was just a little kid, our state has seen major improvements, but we have to continue the work by educating the next generation through literature and other liberal arts. This can only be done by making sure that our local library is adequately funded and ensuring that it remains a relevant resource in today's age of rapidly advancing technology. Personally, I'm pleased to stand before you today and say that our family has remained committed to fostering the improvements that we see in our state by supporting local initiatives that first combat hunger, because as we all know, it can be quite a challenge to learn on an empty stomach, and also forwarding the missions of organizations that are meant to increase literacy across our state and across our nation. Therefore, it would be a privilege to carry out that same initiative at my local library. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to nominate one of these members to the board?
I make a motion that we nominate Randy Robinson to the Columbus Lowndes Library Board.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? We have a substitute motion for Judah. Do we have a second? That motion dies. Going back to the first motion. We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Everybody that applied for this position were very qualified, and we appreciate your interest very, very much.
Mayor and City Council, we have one citizen's input. If she's here, Miss Joyce Ann Hairston, are you on the premises? Come on down, Miss Hairston. This is a late edition. I passed the her input out to y'all, and
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Good
Thank you for
evening.
being here.
I'm here to ask permission about the empty lot across from DHS and Juvenile Detention Center. I would like to go there and set up more like tailgating on the lunch hour for the people that work there and anybody else that would come by. We have a little restaurant already out in Steens called Tasty Attitudes, and it's on Highway 12. And so the people in town, they can come maybe on the weekends, some of them might not come at all, but I would like to bring the food truck and use it to make sandwiches and sides, drinks, dessert. Sandwiches and soup when it gets colder. And I know I needed permission. I didn't want to go out there and just set up and get arrested. So that's why I'm here.
for us to allow it now until we get that policy done. I mean, I respect what you do, but, you know, we want to have a policy so that everybody's treated fairly. So that's where I am, but, you know, we have other councilmen also. But I think we should be through with that policy real soon, hopefully. And I wouldn't have a problem with it, you know, once we get that policy done.
Okay.
I
well,
think it's actually pending before the planning commission at the present time. I'm pretty sure that's right. I know Kenny Wiggle was in the process of finalizing it with Kevin Stafford's input, who's a member of the planning commission.
Okay. I mean, that would be my suggestion, but,
Are you putting that in a motion?
well, I don't think we need a motion. We just don't need to do anything, right? We just wait.
Well, we have to decide if
I'll
we're
do
going to give
that.
her permission to do it or not.
I guess you could table it if that's what you're saying. I mean,
Well, yeah, I would like to table it until we get the policy in.
So we're going to take that in a motion. Do we need to vote on this or just? Okay, Pierre, second. Okay. All in, any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes. Ms. Harrison, we'll get back to you. Thank you
Okay.
so much for coming in, and we'll let you know something soon.
All right, thank you.
Have a good evening. Okay, next we're going to move into the policy agenda. First, we need to discuss and approve the hiring of 3 CPD reserve officers contingent upon a successful drug screening and employment physical.
So move.
Have a motion by Councilman Beard and a second by Councilman Green. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Discuss and approve rehiring of 1 CPD officer contingent upon a successful pre-employment physical and drug screening.
So move.
Had a motion by Councilman Beard, second by Councilman Green. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Thank you. Discuss and approve resolution appointing Patton Mitchell as acting Secretary Treasurer for sole purpose of the execution of paperwork necessary for closing the transaction. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Have a motion by Councilman Beard, a second by Councilwoman Stewart. Voice vote? Can I have a voice vote on this? Is that what you're asking for? Oh, it has to be? Okay. How do we do that? One by one? Councilwoman 1?
Yes.
Yes.
Councilman 2? 3?
Yes.
Unanimous. Thank you. All right, I lost my place. No, are we on D? Discuss, approve, accepting the lowest estimate repair for the fire station number 5 submitted by Bostic Construction in the amount of $43,103.56. Estimated construction to begin October the 11th. Do I have a motion?
I have a question. Would this money come from the city or from the people that ran in and damaged the fire station?
They're uninsured.
Oh, boy.
So what we'll do is, Ms. Mitchell and I, primarily Ms. Mitchell, we've been in touch with the insurance agent. We will submit whichever, if you vote for this, we've already sent the estimates to the insurance company. So if you vote for this tonight, what we'll do is we'll send this to them. They'll mail us 75% of this amount. We'll get the remaining 25% when construction is completed. So we'll just have to float that 25%. I wouldn't want to say too much, but I think there's some active investigation going on into the person that crashed into the fire department. Minus, excuse me, and also back, minus, we will be paid $5,000 deductible.
Okay.
Second.
Have a motion by Councilman Green, a second by Councilman Beard. Any more discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes. Discuss and approve Mike Burnson to perform Chief Financial Officer duties for City of Columbus as time permits from his full-time job with Columbus Light and Water. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. I have a motion
What are we paying him, or he's just volunteering?
Right now, it's just volunteer.
Just volunteer. Okay. I make a substitute motion that we do allow him to volunteer, but I also would like to direct Ms. Pat Mitchell to start the process on hiring a CFO, COO, and a city registrar.
Have we already advertised this position?
No, we have not.
Is there a reason we have not?
We're getting prepared to advertise, yes.
Second.
And also in that motion, man, you need to put in there the criteria,
And,
CFO,
right.
and COO. Make
And-
sure that labor in there.
and we would also like to create a committee, hiring committee, and narrow it down to 3 people, and then bring those 3 people to the council, and we interview those people publicly, and the council make a decision.
I'll second that as well.
Any more discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Discuss and approve the derelict property docket.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm happy to report you only have 3 cases to consider tonight, and the middle one on the list, case number 21-0317, Stephanie Jacobs, located 1522 3rd Avenue North, has remedied her property of cleared the vegetation and rubbish and garbage to the satisfaction of Ms. James, and so all she's asking for at this time on that case is an order of reentry. Is that right, Ms. James?
That's correct.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
I'm the person in question. Can I come up?
Sure.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Mayor, Chief.
Good evening.
Council members. So, can you clarify for me what the motion is that's currently tabled?
Yes, ma'am. The motion that's pending right now is that the council's taken no action against you or your property since you took care of it yourself.
Okay.
But under the Mississippi Code, Section 21-1911, they now have a right if they see a new accumulation of rubbish or an overgrowth of vegetative growth to, instead of start the whole process with a summons and all that over again, they'll contact you probably telephonically and post a sign in your yard, and then they will have 7 days after that where they could go in and clean it up if you don't do that. There's no charge to you at this point. There's no lien on your property.
Okay.
So that's what it is. And they can do that up to 12 times in the next 24 months.
Okay.
And then if 24 months goes by and it were to get overgrown again, and I'm not saying that it would, they would have to start the process all over again with a summons like we did this time.
I see. So I sort of go on probation.
That's a pretty good summary of it, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I just wanted to note, there, in the package that I got in my mail the same day that y'all put up the sign, there is a letter dated September 10th that is sort of like what I would expect to receive first, saying, you know, this is probably an oversight, and if you could please clean this up, then we won't have to proceed. But I never received that letter. The sign appearing in my door was the first I heard of any of it. So I just wanted to express that had I received a letter previously, I would have prevented all of this from happening. So that just may be something to check into.
We'll check into it.
Yeah.
We're not obligated to send a letter, but it was something we came up with to avoid this sort of
Right,
thing. And I'm sorry that you didn't get it, but we'll look into why that is, and we'll try to
Sure,
make
that'd
sure
be
that-
great. Okay, yeah, and so, yes, and I guess I just will mention that if they should feel the need to contact me, I certainly would prefer a phone call to a public shaming sign in my yard. Just putting that
I
out there.
understand.
Thank you.
Okay.
If you would contact Ms. James and maybe give her your phone number if you don't believe she has that.
Okay.
That's what I was saying. They don't, when they look it up, it's only give them the address, so they don't have a phone number to contact you. So that's why
Right.
they put the address, do
Sure,
it that way
So if
first.
you'll call her office tonight or I guess tomorrow during
Sure.
business hours, she'll take it down and we'll have it from then on.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate you coming. Okay, the next two cases I have are the request is for immediate abatement, but the first one is 21-0156 Viola Stewart Bell, 1005 2nd Street South. Viola Stewart Bell, Viola Stewart Bell, if you're here, come forward. I believe that request, Ms. James, is for immediate abatement.
That's correct.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
The final case is case number 21-0338, Robert Raymond, 1110 7th Avenue North. Robert Raymond, I see he's here and on his way. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, everybody.
I guess you know you've been summoned or you wouldn't be here.
Right.
Anyway, the complaint alleges rubbish and garbage on the property.
Yes, sir. I talked to my contractor, and he told me if you look at the right side picture there, there's some black garbage bags. And he said they were dumped there. Some neighbors put them there or something. He wasn't aware of it. And I just assumed since it's in garbage bags, the city would pick it up. But if that's not the case, we'll have to do something.
I don't know, Ms. James, is that the way you observe the property, that there's garbage in garbage bags?
Yes, garbage bag and there's some construction waste. So I mailed out a notice for him to remove it, but it's still not in compliance. So construction waste, the city doesn't pick up. The owner is responsible for hauling it off. So as of today, it was still there.
You say the owner's responsible for hauling off construction waste, Ms. James?
I got a question also. I know it's been vacant for quite some time, and the neighbor has complained about the grass, sometime as well, and it has broken windows. Do you have any plan on doing anything with the property, or?
It's under work with my contractor.
It's been like this since I've been elected, so that's been 6 years, so.
Oh, yeah, well, it was a
Yeah.
lot, yeah. I think I've owned it for 2 years.
You've owned it for 2 years?
Yeah, and that's when the work started.
Okay. And we have a permit
Yes.
taken out of you?
The
Do we have a
contractor does.
timeline on when we may be completed?
I'd like to be completed today, but I'm waiting on my contractor.
Okay. Or if we can board up the windows and all that stuff so that, nobody can go in it. Because I know it's been a complaint that people have been going in it as well.
Yes, sir.
Well, in fairness to Mr. Raymond, we've only summoned him tonight for rubbish and garbage.
Thank you.
I would agree that there's some conditions in that photograph should be addressed. That's right, and it's just as well bring it up while we're talking to him. So, Ms. James, are you saying construction waste, the owner is required to just haul that off and dispose of it lawfully himself?
They are, yes, sir.
Well, but it's not construction waste, it's something that people dump there.
Yeah.
Just call me on Saturday, I'll clean it up for you. I'll board the windows up for you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Anything else?
So do we want to give Mr. Raymond some time, so since there appears to be a plan for it to be rectified?
So would he request an extension to get this done?
Would he like an extension?
Yes, please.
Make a motion that we give him a 30-day extension.
We have a motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Raymond.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming, Mr. Raymond. That's all the cases, Mayor and Council.
That concludes all the, oh, we got an addition. That's right. Thank you, Pierre. The facilities, wanted to talk about that?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I know we brought it up before about the renting or the giving of the city facilities. I know we tabled it, and I wanted to make a motion that we untable it to see where we are with the policy creation.
We have a motion to untable. Have a second. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Same sign. You agree? Okay.
Do we know where we are with the policy? I mean, who was creating the policy? Do we need to come together to see who we're going to give it to, or?
She is not. Mark, can you speak to it, please?
I think if you know, I sent the data to y'all at Stephen's request. If you have, obviously. Okay. Well. Did you get when I sent it? It was after you asked for it. I sent it via email. You asked for it. Okay. Yeah. So it was the usage information and based on kind of broken down at for-profit people versus non-for-profits. I mean, that's generally where we were going and what seemed to be some of the, I guess, talking points where should we give it to charitable organizations versus this? Obviously, if you have any ideas of the policy you'd like to see, if you want to discuss them in an open meeting, then I'd be happy to hear the input. I mean, Regina has her thoughts in that document about how she felt the pricing should be.
Mark, she's on Zoom now.
Okay. She's on Zoom if you wanted to ask her, but is there something specific, or you just want to see progress on it, Pierre? What's the?
I just want to see progress on it, see where we are with it, because understand that we just had someone recently got one of the city facilities, and I just want to know where we are on creating this policy, and if so, you know, when we do give away these buildings, they need to come before the council so we can all have an understanding of what's going on.
Which one who did we give it to? I don't know.
I'm not aware that it was donated.
It was there, but I don't know that it was donated. It didn't come across my desk that I remember.
Well, that's why I brought it up, because it came across mine. I just wanted to make sure.
Bring him up here.
Did we donate it? He says yes.
Every time I get it, I have to.
Did it come across in a policy to vote on?
Can he come up to the mic?
Can you come up?
Yep.
What was suggested was the same way that we had helped the Seventh Avenue Festival in the past, kind of like with the other festivals that have used the Sim Scott building, that we do the same thing this year. Mark.
I mean, it was suggested, you asked Mark that, you said, or?
On the Seventh Avenue Festival with, yeah, we did the.
So shouldn't have that been voted on when we voted on the approval for the 7th Street Festival? Shouldn't that have all been included, what was going to happen when they got to pay? I'm saying, should it have been?
It should have, yeah, it should have been.
So it was, but you're telling me it was not in there? Well, that's where it should have been. This is the first I'm hearing of it, so we will definitely look into it. Thank you, Greg.
The reason I brought it up, because that happened, and I knew we had tabled the policy creation, so if we had tabled something, I wanted to know why we're still giving.
The only other incident that has come across my desk was that the CBB was all asking to use the Trotter, and they had in the past, but for some reason they had been turned down. For what reason, I don't know. And the other people had been able to use it, the ones that you had mentioned before, Jeff, that were partners. Like, for instance, they got it for Market Street. So
Right.
if we were going to do it for Market Street, Regina said that normally that they had gotten it.
What
They're
I,
going to get it for, I forgot what the,
what our practice was, and it wasn't in writing, was that if it was a nonprofit entity to which the city appropriated money, that we would not charge them back for rental, since it's sort of like giving them money and taking it back.
Moving money from your left pocket to your right pocket.
Right.
But
Right.
but to your
That's the other
point,
one I know about.
Pierre, is I'll go back and check my emails and/or date and time that was taking place. If we did do that for the 7th Avenue Heritage Festival, A, it could have been before we kind of put a freeze on things. B, it could have just been an oversight on my part in concentrating on city facilities being where we kind of was the crux of starting it, which was the Trotter. And in any case, I'll let you know if that was a deficiency that I did. More than likely, probably. But I get your meaning. But we've been, I would say, Regina and I have been very, very strident in not allowing anybody to use the Trotter or Regal or anything for free based on what y'all put in place, based on working on the policy, to your point.
how did we did vote for when we used the facilities for the past two events that Joe put on, the Sim Scott and,
The rental assistance there?
yes. We did vote on those, right?
Yes, so the city sponsored it.
Yeah.
So that may be something, if you wanted to put, is to Jeff's point, to Stephen's point, if the city is sponsoring something, or if it's something whereby the city appropriates money, if you're giving money to we're essentially by state law, statute, given law to those festivals. We can't not give it, whether you wanted to or not, how it's written. We're turning around and giving them $10,000 and then charging them $600. There may be something you want to do. Maybe something you don't want to do. If you say if it's a city-sponsored event, perhaps it's free. I'll do it however y'all want. We could do it via a small group setting if you want to put people together and pitch ideas back and forth. If you just want to say, email me ideas that you have about what you might or might not want to see in a policy based on your own, predilections, just you tell me.
Well, I believe that you were put on the committee to overlook that. Is that right? Is that why you emailed it to him?
No, he asked for it.
Well, why don't we do that? Let's form that tonight of the committee, and I'd like for you to chair it, Stephen, if you're willing to. And then I think, Jackie, did you say you got it, in Pierre? I would say, I have a motion. I can't make a motion, can I? Would somebody like to make that motion to have this committee? Great. We have a second?
Second.
Have a second? Any discussion?
Yeah, before we vote on it, we said we got the motion, we got the second. Can we include in that motion to, if anybody wants it, to go ahead and bring them before the council, because a policy may not be created before the next time somebody asks?
I think you can make whatever motion you want.
Okay, well, can I add that to your motion?
But if we're going to start giving the rental, giving our facilities away for free, then we run into a problem unless we treat everybody the same. So if you're going to say people can come and ask for it for free, if you start doing it, then you're running down a slippery slope.
I believe the idea on it was that for nonprofits there would be possibly a sliding scale depending on the size, so that it's not free, but that there may be. That's what the committee needs to look at. Thank you, Stephen. Yes. Got a second? Does everybody understand that motion? Is that
Yes.
clear? All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Thank you. That concludes all the items on the agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I have a question before we adjourn.
Yes, ma'am.
I forgot to add it to policy. Before your administration began, we had voted for so many security cameras to be placed. And it's my understanding, and with the chief here, we only have 2 placed.
Yes.
And my question is, what happened to the rest of the cameras and when will they be installed?
I think Joe can answer that for
I
you.
can answer that, Council Lady. You voted to put out 10 different systems. 10 different systems are being built. The first system took 3 months because we went through 6 variations of it because of the Mississippi heat kept burning them out. And so we went through 6 variations to get a system that would work. The effort was to save money. The prices we got from Starkville vendors, from the people that did Starkville and Mississippi State, were about $15,000 a box. We got our price reduced to about $5,000 a box by doing it ourselves, and they're working great. 2 of them are up. Without going into a lot of police details, they have both now led to felony arrests within 3 weeks after putting them up. The law enforcement is thrilled with them. And so now that we know what we're doing, we knew what we were doing, but now that we know that the equipment will take the Mississippi summer, because when you voted in May, we started putting them out in the sun and they kept failing. And the other vendors wouldn't tell us what they were using because it's proprietary. So we contacted suppliers. We got materials that's designed to work in the heat and the humidity. They haven't failed. They're wonderful. So this is a long answer to say that all 8 remaining boxes are currently underway, and our electricians and people that are building them are able to turn out one every 2 to 3 weeks at the most. So you should see 2 boxes a month. So within the next 3 months, before the end of the year, we hope to have them all up.
And we make sure that they do go around all our parks so the kids will be safe.
Yes, sir.
Before we add them anywhere else.
Yes, sir. And what we'll do is we're working with the police chief. All the data on the locations is data driven, coming from the police department. And so what we'll do is very soon we'll have you a list of where they're going, so that if you decide you want to do more. One of the biggest problems is getting supplies now. Just getting simple metal cabinets is difficult. So we'll give you all the list confidentially of where they'll go, and then with the approval of the police chief, and then you can look forward to see, because he's already identified some other areas too. But it's,
I guess what he is saying is, why am I seeing these going up in places and not at our parks? That's what I want to know.
well,
Why are we putting them on 7th and 15th and it's not at a park? That's what I want to know. Our park take priority over just about any position in the city.
we can
We
put,
had several shootings at CM Scotland in the past week. Several shootings. Right
There has been discussion about it going up next there. I believe these locations were part of where was high crime areas. The one that just went up on the street that you mentioned, there was a shooting there. That I think was some of the information was captured on that. We've got a lot of high crime areas, but I would encourage the council to call and talk to the chief and talk to the others. But getting them up in the parks has been a big discussion. I know not only Sim Scott, but also the one on what is it over on? There's been a lot of high crime over there too. I'm drawing a blank. Yes. But they're already, in fact, most of the cases, I think Joe has gone and looked for the post where the lighting is for that. So I can assure you that the parks have been in high discussion in the shootings. But good questions, thank you.
yes, sir. And council and mayor too, council lady, y'all are our boss. You tell us where they put them, and we're just working with Light and Water and everybody. And so I would defer that.
think we just said that, Joe, we want them at the park.
Yes, sir, understood.
That's what I just said.
Yes, sir, no problem.
I answered that question too, Mr. Mickens. There's no reason to have that tone. Thank you.
Thank you. But anyway, the answer is we hope to have them all up by the end of the year.
Okay.
Now, that concludes all the items on the agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I want to hear it again. Is there a second?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Meeting adjourned.